Now the tropical update, always at 37 minutes past the hour on Weather Tracker TV.
All right, welcome back everybody. Time to get you caught up on the tropics on this TGIF Friday. And I tell you what, if you like tracking tropical activity, so far this season you have not really had much of anything to track. But I tell you what, as we go over the next 5 days or so, you may want to go and start perking up your ears here a little bit because I think the Atlantic Basin is about to energize. We may have a storm, maybe two, that does become named. Now there's no real indication if it will make it to an actual hurricane or not. I think it will. In fact, I'm going to show you this coming up. But again, I think Danielle and I think Earl, are on the way here. Like I mentioned, over the next 5 days, what some of the latest data is showing. This is what I'm talking about. We have two areas we're watching now. Number one, this one for some reason is really, there's a lot of folks on social media talking about this. This is not the one, right? We have an area disturbed weather that is going to be, it is essentially already moving into the Caribbean Sea right now. And the National Hurricane Center here is giving this a very low end 20% probability of any type of development. I'm going to show you the model coming up here momentarily. This is not going to do anything. I mean, we'll continue to track it anytime there's anything in the Caribbean or the Gulf. This time of year it's warm, things can become favorable for development. Right now there's no data out there that's showing any cause for concern with this. In fact, overnight you can see the really kind of the convection or the intensity of the system, where it went from kind of the reds and the yellows down to the greens, the blues. It's kind of shearing apart and kind of falling apart out there. I mean, like I mentioned, we'll watch it, but right now the data not very favorable on this whatsoever. There it is, just kind of an open wave, really just kind of coasting through parts of the Caribbean as we go over the next 5 days or so, coming out over here towards the Yucatan. We'll give them some rain. We'll also give parts of Cuba some rain. But again, right now, the way it looks, no centralized area of low pressure truly forming with that, right? So tropical characteristics not necessarily anticipated with that. Now, I think it's a completely different story out here in our main development zone. We're going to have two separate waves coming off the continent, the coast of Africa. And again, I think both of those may, or in fact, we really have three, but two out of the three, I think are going to pose some opportunity of development. So this is what we're talking about. So number one, we do kind of have our lead wave here, so to speak. Again, not as concerned about that. We do have a wave that literally just came off the coast, even though it is not looking very impressive right now. In fact, it's becoming more disorganized as it continues to make its westerly track across the tropical Atlantic. I think it will energize, and I think it's going to become a named storm. I think it's going to become a hurricane. I mean, there's no real indication yet. Again, could just become a tropical storm, but I think indications are it will become a hurricane. The newest data that I'm tracking very carefully with this is it does bring it into the Caribbean. I'll show you this momentarily. Could curve up to Florida, could go into the Gulf. This is a long ways out. I mean, all this can continue to change, but the latest data, the European data, is being pretty consistent on bringing this now into the Caribbean as some type of a tropical feature, okay? So we want to be clear about that. And then, like I mentioned, there's a third wave behind it, but I think that actually curves out into the open Atlantic and doesn't really pose much of a concern whatsoever. So just looking at the upper air chart here, right, just kind of the area of vorticity or spin, you can see that wave as it comes through. It's not very well organized over the next several days, but again, about 5 days on down the road, take a look at this here. There it is. You can see the centralized area of low pressure develop, and it's beginning to get its act together. From there, it appears as though it's going to make the westerly track over towards the Caribbean. And at that point, again, you're getting so far out there that the data is really just a little too fuzzy. But it appears as though it will have a centerline track for the Caribbean as a named storm. Like I mentioned, Earl, secondary possible storm behind it, would just curve north into the Atlantic. More coming up.